What's up, notJust developers? In this tutorial, you're gonna learn about gesture handlers and how you can drive animations based on the user interactions on the physical device. If you want to follow along this tutorial, make sure to download the starter project down below, and also you'll get the step-by-step guide that I have prepared for you. And without wasting any more time, let's jump into building it. At the moment, nothing happens, but what we want to do is to actually have this nice swipe up to unlock the device animation that will be driven by the gesture of the user. So let's see how we can do that. Well, for that, we're gonna use gesture handler together with reanimated. So if we go into the reanimated documentation, we have here a use animator gesture handler. But for that to work, we first need to install and configure gesture handler in our project. So let's go in our project and do npx expo install React Native gesture handler. The next step would be to wrap our application in a gesture handler root view. So let's go ahead in our app.js and we're going to import here at the top, import React Native gesture handler. We're going to import the gesture handler root view, this one. This component, we always need to wrap our application with it in order for our application to properly manage the gesture handler. So we can actually replace this view with our gesture handler root view because it extends a view and it supports the style. So now everything is okay, everything is prepared for the next step. Our next step is going to be where? Going back to our reanimated, we're gonna use the use animated gesture handler in order to drive some animation for our gestures. So first of all, we are going to have to define the area where we want to handle the gestures. And we cannot define the whole screen as the gesture handler because, for example, in the middle of the screen, if we scroll, we want to scroll the list, like this part is regarding scrolling the list. What we can do is to define here on the bottom like a small part of the screen that will actually handle these gestures of unlocking the phone. And this actually happens on the iOS screen as well, because here in the middle, if we scroll, we are not unlocking the phone, but if we start scrolling from the bottom here, then we are actually unlocking the phone. So let's go ahead in our lock screen and we're gonna import a component from gesture handler, which is called pan gesture handler from React Native gesture handler. All right, so using this component is going to help us detect pan gestures, basically drags over the screen. So let's go ahead and render it somewhere on the bottom of the screen. Probably I'm gonna do it like right after the swipe up to open. Let's go ahead and render the pan gesture handler. And inside the pan gesture handler, we need to render an animated view that we're gonna give some styles. For example, let's give right away a background color red just to see where this component is displayed. Another thing that I want to do is to display it as absolute. So I'm gonna say position absolute like this. And what else? I want the width to be full width of the screen. And for the height, I want around 100 pixels, something like this. And it's not positioned where I specifically want it to be positioned, but I can provide here bottom 0 and left 0. Okay, why it's here? Let me actually try to move it outside of our footer. This is our footer. So I'm gonna move it outside of our footer like this. And now it actually displays properly where we want it to be. Don't bother about the background color red, because once we are done, we will uncomment this out and we will not see this, this view, but it will be there and it will be ready to handle our pan gestures. So I'm gonna leave it with red just for us to at least see it on the screen and understand what's happening there. So now let's define the handler for our pan gesture handler. That will be the place where we will write our logic. So for that, we're gonna use the use gesture handler hook from React reanimated. I don't see React reanimated here, but it's, oh, here, animated. So we need the use animated gesture handler, and let's define it here. Const unlock gesture handler equal use animated gesture handler, and here we need to specify an object with our events that we want to handle. There are a couple of events. One of them is, for example, one start. Basically, whenever we start the gesture, we have on active, and this is whenever we keep like dragging through the screen, this will always be called. And lastly, we have on end that will be called when we end our gesture. So let's go ahead and start with some console log on start. Let's do the same for the other, just to see on active and here on end. Now this unlock gesture handler we can send to our pun gesture handler as on gesture event unlock gesture handler. Now let's look at our logs, and let's start dragging starting from the red area. So if I'm gonna start from somewhere else, I don't see anything, but if I'm gonna start from here, yes, on active, on end, and when we start, we see on start, then on active as long as we are dragging, and then on end. The cool thing is that all of these events, they contain some information. For example, we will receive them here in the event. So in the on active, if I'm going to console log the event, we're gonna see what information we know about the drag event. So if I'm gonna do like this is the object, and we see a lot of things like absolute X, absolute Y, the event name. What we are interested in actually is the translation Y, and we specify how much did we move a finger on the Y axis, and there is also translation X, which in this situation we are not interested in, but in our situation we also need it because this indicates how far did we move our finger on the X axis. So based on this translation Y, let's go ahead and save this translation Y in a shared value, because this translation Y will drive a lot of animations. For example, as we move our finger up, we also need to move the whole lock screen and reveal the home screen underneath, right? So let's go ahead and have here a const. I'm gonna do just Y. Use shared value initially is going to be 0. Now let's go ahead and in the on active we're gonna say y.value equal to event.translation y, and at the moment nothing will change, but based on this y value we can move a bit this container. For example, if I'm gonna to manually add a transform translate y, for example 100, then we're gonna see how our screen moves below, but if I'm gonna do -100, it's gonna move in that direction, upwards. So this is the property that we want to animate based on our Y value that we get from the gesture handler, from the finger of the person. So for that, we're going to have an animated style, similar to how we had it for the footer, but in this case is for our whole container. So container, animated container style, use animated style, and here we need to provide a function that will create this style. So as we said, we want to animate the transform and specifically the translate y using the value from our shared value like this, and here we should have an object like this. Now let's go ahead and send this animated container style to our image background, but we need to check if animated contains the image background property. I don't think it does, so for that reason we're gonna move a bit of things around. For example, we're going to wrap our whole component in a view, in an animated view like this. Let's close it at the end so that our image background will be a child of our animated view. Okay, something is showing up. I don't need that transform here anymore. I'm gonna leave it styles.container. What's going on here? Let's do here styles.container, and here we don't need styles.container, or maybe we need container. What does it specify? Flex 1 and width 100. Yeah, let's do it like this. But for the animated view here, we also want to send the animated container style that will move up and down our component as we drag the finger on the screen. So let's add here the animated container style and let's give it a try. If I drag from here and move up, as we can see right away, our animations are working. That's perfect. So that means that we're on the right track. One thing to smoothen up the animation is for the style of our container not to move it directly proportional with how our finger is moving, but to use that timing animation in order to do these changes through a small period of time, and that will improve the smoothness of this animation. So it's going to be very easy. For example, the translate Y will be with timing. We'll try to follow the Y value. With timing, we need to import it from reanimated. And now, as you can see, like probably we can play around with, play a bit with it, specifically with the easing or with the duration of 100. Let me actually check on iOS. Don't like it very much, to be honest. I think it's because of easing, but I didn't have time to learn a lot about easing. It's the way our timing function works. So there are different easing functions, and I'm gonna look here, easing functions, just to show you what I mean by that. And the standard easing, I think, should be something like this one, easing outside, where we slowly start, then we accelerate, and then slowly end. What I'm interested in is something actually linear. Do we have something like linear easing? Where is my with timing? Here, with timing, and the easing will be easing dot linear. Yeah, now it looks much better. Yeah, I think that's what I needed, a linear easing function for our timing animation, so that it doesn't change like very weirdly throughout the animation. It slowly moves towards the finger. So our view is actually following the way we move on the screen, but the problem is that, as you can see, it kind of stucks in the middle whenever we leave a finger. So what we have to do is on end, for example, we can right away say dot value equal 0, and that will make sure that when we end, it will move back down. But we don't always want to move the screen down, because if it's more than halfway to the top, it actually should go up and unlock the screen. So we're gonna have to do some checks. If y.value, if current y.value is more than half of the screen, do we have a height? We don't have a height. Let's get the height of a screen. Height using use dimensions. So we're gonna check if y is more than height divided by 2. Then what we want to do is actually we want to go to the position height, and vice versa, else we want to go to the 0. So now if it's here, it's gonna go to the 0. If it's here, it's gonna go also to the 0. I think I know why, because our y.value is a negative value, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm gonna do that, we see it's a negative value. So we should do it a bit different. If the negative value is less than minus height divided by 2, then okay. Then I need to move to the minus height as well. So I'm gonna refresh. If it's not enough, it's gonna go back. If it's all the way to the top, and if I release it here, now I see it go to the top. Now you can see it better. And yeah, as I said, it works as we wanted. Another thing that I want to implement right now is, the thing is that if I very fast move it up, it should always unlock it, not only when I reach the top. So for that, we're gonna have to work also with the velocity of our movements. So if I check here, yeah, let's get the event when we end this gesture, and let's console log event dot velocity on the y-axis. Now, if I'm gonna slowly move up and then release it, my velocity is minus 83 pixels. If I'm gonna do it very fast, my velocity is 900 here. And if I'm gonna do it even faster, my velocity is 3000 here. Here is where we are unlocking, and here is where we reset. So if our velocity is less than minus some number, minus 500 or something like that, then we want to actually unlock our phone without checking these field values. So we're gonna add here a OR operator. So if the velocity y is less than minus 500, then we want to unlock it. And now if I'm gonna slowly move up and release it, it's gonna come back. But if I'm gonna do it fast, then it's gonna unlock it. So that's how we implement this event. Maybe it's too fast, right? If it's too fast, then we can also slowly move to that direction. For example, here we can do with timing to minus height based on some duration. For example, the duration to this would be, I don't know, 500 milliseconds. And maybe the default 300 will work better. And as well, we can provide the easing as easing.linear. I think when we go to 0 is okay. No, it's too fast. So we're gonna do with timing here as well. Okay, now it looks better. All right, so that's how we implement this gesture handler here. What we also can do is in our application, go ahead and render the actual home screen. It's gonna be like a simple image. I'm not gonna develop the home screen of iOS, but it's gonna give us this impression that we are unlocking the screen. So let's go ahead in the images, and we have here home or home 2. Let's import them. Home. I think I'm gonna import home 2 because it has a better quality. And I'm gonna render it somewhere here, I don't know. Image, source, home 2, style. Let's close the image and let's see if we have it. We need to probably import the image from React Native. And here is the image. If I refresh, the image is displayed on top of a lock screen. If I'm gonna do it like this, our lock screen is displayed on top of the image. And if I swipe up, we see that we have a unlocking effect. Now let's go in the lock screen and remove this red background color from this view. And also I think I'm gonna replace it with a style here called Pan Gesture Container. And let's copy all the styles from there. Styles, Pan Gesture Container. Now, yeah, I think it looks good. We don't have red, but our component is still working as expected, and we can unlock the screen as we want. I'm gonna render this image inside our lock screen just to have everything there in the lock screen and not work in the application. So let's grab this image from here and move it in the lock screen somewhere on top. Probably we're gonna put it here. First, we're gonna put the image, and then we're gonna have an animated view. And yeah, like here we have a lock screen basically, and here we have the home screen. We need to import the image. We need to import home 2 in our lock screen. And yeah, now it works the same, but the thing is that our home screen is here, so it's gonna make a little bit easier to implement. The gesture that will actually lock the screen is moving from the top, like from the top part, from the very top. Should we make this a background image? Let's try image background, because inside of it we need, for example, we need another pan gesture that we have similar here for locking. Let's do it like this. So for this one, I'm going to do color, background color red, or let's do blue. And it's also on the bottom, right? Yeah. Pan gesture container unlock. There will be unlock and lock. This one will be container unlock. And we're gonna have a same, almost the same for the lock. Position absolute. We're gonna not put it on the bottom, but on the top of the screen. Same height, and also let's do background color just to see it. Background color blue. Now it's here on the top, and let's go ahead and we specified the same gesture handler, and I think the same gesture handler should work for us. Kinda, but not exactly. I think we're gonna have to also work with the event console.log. Let's just do event and let's have a look. This one has on active, but the other one doesn't. Nonetheless, from this one, what's gonna happen with absolute y as we move it to the top? As we move it to the top, our absolute y decreases. Maybe we need it with absolute Y. Let's give it a try. So on active, I don't know why the console log here doesn't work. Absolute Y, not exactly. We need the starting position, and then we will add the translation. I don't understand why. Oh, because I think it moves from there. Wait, you know what we can do? Is instead of having two of this gesture handler, only to have one here on the bottom, this one. So for the unlock, background color, red. And if we make it like that, this punch gesture container expands a bit to the bottom of a container with a transform, translate, -100. Are we working? Yeah, with other one, with this one. Transform Y 100. The height is 100, so let's make the height 200. And now this red will be half there, half here, and we will be able to work with only one of them. So I'm just gonna comment out the blue container from here, and we're gonna figure out how to work with this one. So we have this on active. On active doesn't have, but on start has the starting coordinates. So on start console log event. Let me comment out it from here. And now when I start, absolute X, event name, handler, number of points, all state, target, translation, velocity, X and Y. It has X and Y. So we can use the X and Y from there. Why not to use the Y? Okay, let's have a look at the documentation. React Native handler. Translation X. Translation of punch gesture along Y-axis accumulated over the time of a gesture. The value is expressed in the point units. X coordinate of the current position of a pointer finger or a leading pointer when there are multiple fingers placed, relative to the view attached to the gesture detector. Relative to the view. Okay, that's the problem, because it's relative to the view attached to gesture handler. So the Y position is relative to this view. If I'm gonna do event.y here, we're gonna see initially it's probably positive, and then once we move above, it becomes negative because it's relative to this red box. That's not exactly what we need. Absolute Y coordinate of a current position of a pointer. The value is expressed in, okay, it's recommended to use it instead of Y in case when the original view can be transformed as an effect of a gesture. Okay, let's see what's the difference between Y and absolute Y. Oh, I think this one is the screen position. And if I'm gonna do absolute Y here, absolute Y, and then using this absolute Y, I translate. Do I need to translate to negative? Yes, I need to translate to negative values. This one is positive values, and I think I have to translate to Y value minus height of a screen, and initially Y value should be the height of a screen. Yes, it works. Okay, I think my checks here. So we're not gonna work anymore with negative values. We're gonna work with positive values. So let's revert this to more than height. If it's less than that, we should unlock. And if event velocity Y, probably that's gonna be the same. When we unlock, we move it to 0. We move it to the top. And when we reset, we move it to the height. Now let's check it out. And if I'm gonna scroll up, I'm gonna leave it here. It comes back down. There it moves up. If I'm gonna do it fast, it's gonna move fast up. The same with velocity should happen for the reset, because if the velocity is very fast down, we need to reset it. Well, I'm gonna do them in separate if statements because that's gonna make a bit easier. If event.velocity Y is more than 500, then we need to, well, this is else. If, then we need to reset. Here is unlock. I can make them into functions, but I will put them like this. Unlock, reset. So now if I'm gonna scroll fast down, it's gonna work. Yes, it's so good. Now I can finally remove red background, and our gesture handlers for the lock unlock are working properly. Sweet. So on start event, we don't even need it. Okay, so that's how you implement gesture handler in your application in order to drive some swiping animations. For example, in this application that we are building here, where we are trying to reproduce iOS lock screen, we implemented the gesture handler to unlock the screen. So as you can see, the gesture handler only works on the bottom part here, because if we scroll in the middle part, we're gonna scroll the flat list. But if we're gonna drag from the bottom, our lock screen follows our finger, and if we release it here on the top, it will unlock the screen. If we release it to the bottom half, it will reset it back here. But we also implemented some checks for velocity, because if we swipe up very fast, then it will unlock, and that's how it works on iOS. And the same thing for unlocking, like if I swipe from the top of a screen down very fast, then our screen will lock. We're gonna see this lock screen. So I hope that you learned something new today, and if you enjoyed this tutorial, make sure to subscribe to our channel not to miss our future tutorials and also our weekly live builds. Now you can go ahead and watch the next tutorial in this series here to learn more about blur views and how to animate them to build beautiful user interfaces. That's it for today. Bye.